Here at home, the startup landscape is continuously growing, and one organization has also continued working with and investing in over a dozen enterprises. Joining us now to talk more about this is Xchange Director Greg Moral Perez. Good afternoon, Greg. Welcome to the program.
Good afternoon, Stanley. Happy to be here.
Good to have you here. Now, the Marcos administration's pivot to agriculture and food security comes, of course, at a time when the Philippines was at its most unproductive. With this, entrepreneurship in agriculture sector is seen to grow with all the government support. What do you see in the horizon as regards agriculture and entrepreneurial opportunities in the country?
Sure, yeah. In terms of agriculture, we're seeing a lot of opportunities in the tech space. We're seeing a lot of agri-tech enterprises come up. And specifically, Xchange, we invest in impact enterprises that are at early stage. And so we're seeing enterprises that are addressing supply chain challenges, market challenges. However, what we really need is kind of a blended approach. Definitely, the entrepreneurial approach lends itself to, scalability and thinking outside of the box and innovation. But at the same time, as was discussed in the previous segment, we do still need that infrastructure in terms of communications and roads, ports, electricity, internet connectivity in terms of price and access. And there is also the need for mechanization. Right. So that lends itself to, shared service facilities or shared models where there is a tractor and a farmer doesn't necessarily have to own the tractor themselves, but can rent it from either an entrepreneur or perhaps the Department of Agriculture, as well as the need for irrigation. So it's a long laundry list,
right.
But this also indicates that there's a lot of opportunity for collaboration and entrepreneurship.
Yes, pretty interesting possibilities that you brought up a while ago. You have all of that technology-aided initiatives. But as far as fresh ideas are concerned, are you seeing a lot in the Philippines?
Fresh ideas, that's a great question. So we do believe that fresh ideas and innovation really comes from need. And while we do need some fresh ideas, there are a lot in terms, again, of the tech space and how to harness tech. There are also a lot of examples abroad that we can actually bring in here because there are other countries that have similar challenges that maybe
right.
they've already addressed. So,
right.
for example, the need for addressing the risk in terms of weather, and we've seen. These solutions already in India, in Africa. There are some interesting solutions in terms of radio, right. using radio as a way to disseminate information. And we're hoping to see that here, really more appropriate technology. I know that there are, we have our state universities in terms
right.
of tech and machinery who are working on these problems, really at a micro level. And as part of kind of their graduate degree programs, but we have yet to see these innovations really adopted on the ground and scaled up.
It's good to know that a lot of Filipinos are now opening or redoing their mindset from employment to having businesses of their own in many of the fields that you mentioned, entrepreneurship. Of course, this can bring productivity while lifting sectors out of poverty as well. Now, many have failed, though, in achieving this, primarily because of the lack of strategy and startup assistance. Tell us about how this has impacted small businesses and how can Xchange help?
Right. Thanks for that question. So in terms of support, we do see a lot of interest in terms of college graduates, and we're seeing some programs who are doing it earlier. So I think long-term support, one question to ask ourselves is what trees need to be planted today? How do we develop entrepreneurship from a young age? Because predominantly there's still that mindset that we need to find, a high-paying job. But to your point, as you were saying, a lot are more exploring into entrepreneurship. So Xchange as an investor and incubator, we provide that non-financial support in terms of incubation, in terms of helping entrepreneurs. We're a thought partner, basically, help them think through strategy. And as an angel investor, we also, we roll up our sleeves and introduce them. It will be dating myself, but to use an old metaphor, we open up our Rolodex and connect them with others who might be strategic. We also help with accounting. That is a common point of failure among many enterprises where they might be good at product development, they might be good at marketing, but the back end, really building their own internal infrastructure and data collection and accounting so that they can make data-driven processes, data-driven decisions based on what they're seeing. We come in with really supporting the accounting process and helping them set that up properly, because the fundraising doesn't end with us. So we come in terms of the financial support. We come in with equity or convertible debt, or it might be project finance or working capital loans. But one of our goals is to help them access more institutional capital. With banks, that is still a challenge where enterprises need to show 3 years profitability. In many cases, they're still asked for hard assets. And a lot of the enterprises really don't have this, and that's where kind of Xchange comes in to help them with that, help them build that track record and financial history so that then they can access other financial institutions and other incubation programs.
All right, it's good. I like the term incubation or percolation of ideas. Of course, we have plenty of that in the Philippines. Our young entrepreneurs will never run out of fresh ideas. But then we had the pandemic. Now, the Philippines has small, medium, and micro enterprises seem to have driven local economies in the past 3 years. But that sector has been most affected, of course, by COVID-19 and the COVID curbs. Now, hardly any small business has recovered in the last 2 years. What's the real picture out there?
So in terms of the impact space, there were a lot of challenges. So even before the pandemic happened, one of the things that we encourage our enterprises to do, or the entrepreneurs to do, is to really have runway. So that they're not, of course, in the beginning when they're still determining, where will the revenue come from and what's the business model, they should have at least 12 to 18 months runway in order to help them survive any unexpected challenge. And that's exactly what happened with the pandemic. And so there are a couple of enterprises that did survive and successfully pivoted, including those in our portfolio, because they did have that runway that gave them that cushion, because of course fundraising was challenging during the pandemic. Having said that, just to finish the thought, having said that, there were still opportunities for fundraising because the enterprises that we work with, being in impact, are not necessarily just consumer driven, but really they are solving a real problem, whether it's in education, whether it's in a green product that they've found a market niche for. So there have been the enterprises are still, I wouldn't say thriving, but are surviving and have prepared for exactly where we are today when the economy opens up, and this is what they needed to do during the pandemic.
All right, lastly and perhaps very briefly, you participated in the Philippine Startup Week. What are your insights from the gathering, and what opportunities lie ahead for the country?
Yes, a lot of opportunities. I mean, at the macro level, again, the as already mentioned, GDP is starting to recover in terms of, the population speaking in English, in terms of how young the population is. So at that level, it's good. And there are a lot of funds who are looking at the Philippines, looking to see, can we expand here? Can we invest here? But at the same time, what we're doing at Impact Pioneers, we're also helping to provide more transparency in the space because it's still quite opaque. We also discussed the missing middle, which kind of is discussed as a monolithic problem, which is kind of an investment from $250,000 to $1 million. But within that space, there's still there's still a huge gap. So that's an interesting trend and opportunity for other other players and investors to come in and fill in that gap, be part of the ecosystem. It's exciting, it's growing, lots of new models coming out, and we really encourage people to dip their toes in the water maybe in the beginning and start investing in impact enterprises.
All right, Exchange Director Greg Moral Perez, thank you so much for joining us. Good luck to you and Exchange.
Thank you, Stanley.